Hello, friends. Welcome back to Love Wrestling. Spencer Love here, and I can't put it any other way than it is cool as heck, to excuse my language, but to be joined by a TNA Hall of Famer, a WWE Hall of Famer, and a peer in the podcast game. Jarrett, Double J, joining me. Like I said, friend, it is so cool to be sitting across from you and getting to pick your brain for the next 15 to 20 minutes. How are you doing before we get into it? How are things on your world?
Life in my world is fantastic. You know, at this moment, do you know there's only really one thing that would make life better? Can I go ahead and lay it on you? I mean, life is good. My world's going. I've got some projects that are going to be coming out in the weeks and months to come. It's the summer of no worries. I love the summertime. I'm a summertime kind of guy. Just family's good. Podcast is good. Projects are good, but I'm still missing one thing, Spencer. You know what that is?
I couldn't tell you.
I would love to be having, and maybe we could have a virtual cup of Tim Hortons. Where's my coffee? You're supposed to bring
Excellent. See, I've got, you gave me a good opportunity for a cheap shell of the mugs too, but I got my coffee going. So at least over here in Edmonton, Alberta, of course, I've got to be a good Canadian if I'm doing this. It's the homemade Tim Hortons, but I digress. It's always good over here in Edmonton, Alberta. 35 years, man, in professional wrestling. When I say that to you, is it surreal? What kind of emotions do you get when you hear that you've done pretty well everything? You've had a long career in one of the toughest businesses to make it in. What are sort of the thoughts when you hear that?
You know, with me and Conrad nudged me into, and we took off on this journey. We announced it literally the day after WrestleMania this year and launched it in May. And there are moments when he'll bring up something, and currently we're on this kick. He's talking about my entrance music and Robert Palmer and Simply Irresistible, but there's some Texas stories, just different little stories. And he's like, yeah, in 1988 or 1992 or 90. I'm like, oh my God, that, because literally this may sound crazy. It feels like, gosh, I'm sounded just like, oh my God, like an old timer, but it feels like yesterday that I was the kid in the dressing room, that I was, here's Joe LeDuc or Jerry Lawler or, you know, Bill Dundee, and then, you know, go out to Texas and Killer Dan Brooks and Bronco Lubitsch and names that you guys, you know, going to Japan. I got to, you know, I got to team with Cowboy Bob Orton. And so, you know, when I connect those dots and say, wow, I'm very grateful. It tells me I've been around a long time, but time flies when you're having fun. And I'm telling you, I've definitely had a lot more good memories than bad memories. And that's blessed to get to, you know, I've got a couple of Steve quotes. I'm in my home office, the My World podcast studio here, but you know, Steve, you know, it's Warren Buffett, different. I'm a quote guy, but you know, to get up and not have to go to a quote unquote regular job every day. I've been blessed with this kind of career. It's amazing. And I really am grateful for that.
Is that maybe what inspired you to get into the podcast game? I know you've talked about The Last Dance being a huge conduit for it, but as a quotes guy, you've always said, learn from the past, but don't focus on the past. This is really the first time that you've dived into your career, especially to this extent. So maybe what inspired the jump? I know you said Conrad was poking, so maybe was that the reason you chose him as the co-host, the MC, the whatever phrase you want to put on Mr. Thompson?
See, well, I mean, yeah, I you know, I don't want to say the stars align because that sounds like there's some cosmic event, but in reality, I have thought, I've actually had this thought quite a bit the last month that had the pandemic not have happened, I don't think there would be a My World. I just, I don't. So, because I was in the house like the whole world was, I was in the house, which gave me the opportunity to watch, unfortunately or fortunately, a lot of Netflix, Tiger King included, but no, you know, watching all different, and I'm not a TV guy. I'm a sports guy. You know, nowadays we can follow just about everything on our phone, but watching The Last Dance, Conrad had literally been on me since 2017. Understanding the business of podcasting with ad sales and the Patreon and everything that goes with that, understanding that it's creating a platform, but also the really the ability, and I don't want to say this, I want to say it accurately and with all due respect that podcasting is truly a form of entertainment now. And that's something that really didn't resonate with me. I'm the guy that grew up and our program is on Saturday mornings or Saturday nights. And then we went to Monday Night Raw for 1 hour, then 2 hour, then 3 hour. And, as the business has evolved, but I never really dreamed that, for me to be telling the stories, I grew up in the industry that was so, kayfabe, that word, but just really closed and private. And so I'm telling stories now that candidly, I was born and raised and taught you don't talk about these kind of things. And if you do, they're on train rides or bus rides or car rides or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
Conrad sat down and we had those in-depth conversations, and I sort of understand the business and the content. I'm like, going back to what we just talked about, 35 years, I think I've got quite, I don't say an unlimited supply, but I've got 35 years in multiple promotions in multiple ways to look at it. And Conrad always harps on that. I'm a third generation promoter, in-ring performer, and just sort of seen different facets of the industry. So, best way for me to say it is the stars did align in so many different ways. And I'm glad now. I'm elated. So much good has come out of the podcast and just a real short amount of time as well.
I completely agree. Now, you alluded to it a couple of times there. You started off as a referee in Memphis. You've taken on a lot of roles in pro wrestling. Quite literally, Jeff, is there anything in pro wrestling that you haven't done? Any role, any comment, anything like that?
Well, I can tell you this, and I think one of the hardest jobs in the world. I've never been a full-time play-by-play or color commentator, and that is a hard job. That is not easy. And I say anybody can do it, but it's like singing. Anybody can do it. Can they do it good? I don't know about that. You got to have a real skill set to position yourself to tell the stories in an entertaining fashion, but help the audience connect with the talent. You don't want them connecting with per se with you as an individual. You want them to help your conduit. And there's so many good ones through the years. I think Michael Cole is really, really good, but in reality, he had to follow, if you will, Jim Ross and Jerry Lawler in the Attitude Era. So it's not difficult, but those guys both are really, really good at what they do. Jerry Lawler is obviously a family friend and ex-business partner for my dad, and I've known him forever, but his skill set of narrating a story and evoking the right emotion, I'm not sure that he's, yes, Jesse the Body and Bobby the Brain. And look, we could go on and on, but old King is right up there. So, but you asked the question, what haven't I done? I'm sure, look, until I started podcasting, I hadn't done podcasting. And this is much or more, you look at Conrad's stable, and I don't want to ramble here, but look, Kurt Angle, Arn Anderson, Jim Ross, Eric Bischoff, Bruce Pritchard, what a stable. And I'm the last one to the party, but it's pretty cool that it's as much or more part of this business now. I'll say the media. Look, me and you are sitting here talking as peers in the podcast world, but it's just, man, the business has grown, and the licensing, just closed up a sale on an action figure that goes back 30 years. There's so much going on in this industry. Man, you could talk for an hour or 2 hours or 3.
Oh man, I would highly, highly like to take the up on that opportunity here sooner rather than later. But we'll get back to pro wrestling in a second. You mentioned TV, you mentioned movies. I had to ask, and I don't really have much context outside of the Wikipedia page, but what was it like working with Larry the Cable Guy as his wrestling coordinator?
Oh, blue collar comedy. That was a lot of fun. Just the different opportunities that come out of being around this business. I did a cameo in Spring Breakers, and, my kids are Selena Gomez fans, and we go, and Spring Breakers was not a Disney movie, if you've ever seen that.
To say the least.
That or blue collar comedy, Life with Mikey, Head of State, Chris Rock, all the different kinds of movies and TV shows and opportunities, traveling over to Abu Dhabi and eating, a meal with royal family, just the opportunities. It's just crazy sort of the life I've been blessed with. But blue collar comedy, Larry the Cable Guy, that is one. I can say this: he's as funny off camera as he is on.
you love to hear it. And somebody else, obviously, that you obviously went into a lot of detail as well on my world is Owen Hart. I don't think I need to speak to his ribs or even anything involving everything around the situation. But I did want to ask you, what was it like, or what did it mean to you winning the Intercontinental Championship 8 days after the incident? Because you see, like, you literally scream to the sky. Obviously, you talk in the podcast about how close you guys were. Like, you literally wrestled his last match with him. So what did that mean to you among the myriad of championship wins that you have had in your career?
You can't really put it into words on, at that stage in my career in 99, I'd been wrestling 13, 14 years and, won the regional titles and, whether go to Japan or Puerto Rico or Texas. And then obviously the first time I won it against Razor, and I went into, as you said, I went into really deep, some really deep discussions about that, obviously, as you're aware on my world, but I didn't really process at the time, but I know the overwhelming of emotion because, what was going on prior to that. Me and Owen had been teaming and he was doing the Blue Blazer. I'll just say that the Intercontinental title wasn't in the cards or wasn't in the plans. And so when that opportunity hit, it was overwhelming. And it played out right on the whole world to see. So of course it was special, but much more special than winning the Intercontinental title. And no disrespect. To me, it's still, in a lot of ways, the second most prestigious belt in the world. And yes, there's a Raw belt and a SmackDown belt, and no disrespect to any of that, but the Intercontinental title for me, and this is for me, has such a special lineage from, we can call it on, but Kurt Hennig and Roddy Piper and Brett and Shawn and Razor and just, Stone Cold and Rock, and just how it was through the years. And in a lot of years, The Miz, I think, gave it a lot of respect. And so it's a special title in the annals of professional wrestling. But for me to win it under those circumstances, Spencer, you hit the nail on the head. It goes without saying. I can't really put it into words how special it was.
Mm-hmm. Obviously the circumstances that it comes out of is terrible, but man, it means a lot to hear that too. Like we were talking before the show started, like you're talking to an Albertan about a heart. I don't think you need to say anything more than that, right? Yep. Of course, someone that you famously lost the Intercontinental Championship to was Chyna, and I know again you've dove into that story quite a bit on your end of things. But with the documentary just coming out on her, I wanted to just maybe get some thoughts on Chyna the person rather than the professional wrestler, and again the situation that maybe caused you to lose the championship to her. So maybe just a little on Chyna herself.
I've said this a lot on my world and a lot in my life. My kids have heard it. I don't believe in coincidences. I just don't. I believe in convergences. I don't think anything really happens by accident. And when I sit here today, obviously years removed from the situation, that, when I left the WWF at the time, I had my last match with Chyna. And then fast forward, Chyna's last match was against me in a TNA ring. That's didn't happen by accident. And for whatever reason, and I don't know, but God rest her soul. She's battled, she really battled her demons. And the fond memories I've had, that Good Housekeeping, but that night there was obviously I've gone into a lot of drama about the pay and that whole, we'll say, out of the ring situation. But as far as the creative and the in ring and the match that was laid out, and Pat Patterson, and, just the different finishes and how Pat, came up with that creative swerve. And I knew in my mind before I got to the building, sort of the match that I wanted to lay out and building up to that. And look, the entire story, as you know, sort of goes back several weeks, if not months, quite a bit, because DX, yes, Stone Cold in so many ways identified the Attitude Era, and so did Mick Foley and Hell in the Cell and all that. But when you look at DX at the real height of the Attitude Era, you had the New Age Outlaws and Road Dogg and his catchphrases and just the emotion that he evoked. But, also a part of that was, to me, just right up there at the top of all, a female for the first time in her look and her charisma. That's Chyna. I mean, she identified the Attitude Era in so many ways, and the storyline that, you know, me beating up women and Cindy Margolis and Moolah and just the whole build up to that and the mud match and all those kind of things really was a fantastic creative story. And so I have nothing but fond memories of all that. But man, what a tragedy! And the documentary was, you know, it was heart wrenching in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You know, a lot of people say, "Oh my God, why'd they document that?" But you know, if it can help one person, and it can help, I can assure you, I feel like it will help a lot of people. But you know, seeing Chyna, the megastar on TV, but realizing in everyday life, she in a lot of ways was literally living in hell on earth, and
Yeah.
it's tragic in so many ways.
Yeah, obviously, I don't want to make it sound like I'm picking on her, but when you look at so many examples in pro wrestlings of things going the wrong way, how much does it mean to you that you were able to overcome those demons? And really, since sort of 2017, 2018, when you did your treatment, that you've overcome that, and so much great has come out of that.
Well, look, that's a whole nother podcast, and we can get really deep, as deep as you want.
And we're going to plug where you can find those all at the end of the show.
But you know, it's maybe sounds so cliche-ish, but it is literally one day at a time. And, you know, understanding what the disease of addiction, people can have cancer, they can have heart disease, they can have diabetes. You know, there's all kinds of different diseases that manifest themselves in different ways. The disease of addiction affects your brain and the part of the brain that controls behavior. And when you put on your, and I don't want to even going to call it medical or scientific hat, but when you look at the disease of addiction through those lens, you understand that not only how serious it is, but how debilitating. And those stories play out every day, whether it's the wrestling industry, the legal industry, the banking, you name it, the services industry. It is, you know, the numbers are staggering, especially coming out of COVID, of mental health and all that. So I am, you know, I again, I still stay amazed that for today, you know, as they say in cancer, I put that disease in remission. It's there, it's going to be there, but guess what? There's people that walk around with cancer every day. There's people that walk around all that, but I do the things that I feel that I've been taught necessary to do to stay sober. And, but only by the grace of God, did I have that ability to learn that. And I'm going to keep on keeping on, because before we roll tape, you were asking, how's life going? And I said, man, life is getting better and better. And just when I think it can't get better, it gets better. And I am, you can say blessed or lucky or all the above, but that's how I really feel.
Well, and I love to hear that, Jeff, because much like you said about the documentary earlier, if even just one person hears what you just said, and hopefully you get more listener and viewership than that, but I think that'll hit them in the heart as it's hitting me. That means a lot that you'd share, and thank you very much for that. Now, to get back to the professional wrestling side of things, you've mentioned yourself again. You were in the ring with Cowboy Bob Orton and Owen Hart and David Arquette at one point. So maybe is there anybody that you didn't get the opportunity to work with that you say, I would have loved to be in the ring with this person or had a story with them?
Oh, wow. I mean, you know, if we go back into the 60s or 70s, I mean, you know, I even got to wrestle Dory Funk in a match, and that was my dad's favorite world champion. So that was very special. Cool. Obviously, Dory was in his 60s at the time. But no regrets. But I mean, we literally, if we wanted to talk wrestling and potential opponents, you know, that's just one of those things that again, no regrets, but there's a laundry list of folks in the past, and then today's modern stars. You know, you look at guys that, I mean, it's just, I mean, Roman Reigns and, you know, his family worked with my family dating back to the 70s. Look, I don't want to single anyone out. There are so many talent out there today, and the business is healthier than it's ever been from a talent perspective. There's a lot of talent out there, man. You've got my wheels thinking, but you know, in my past, I can't really think of any women. I know there's many, but, look, Nature Boy Buddy Rogers, a classic, Bruno. I'd love for Bruno to kick my ass a few times.
I love it. And I know you also said with Chris Van Vliet that you've always got a guitar handy. So that's always nice to hear on my end of things. But I am going to single out one person because I'm sure you've heard the rumors by this point. What are your thoughts on a potential CM Punk return to All Elite Professional Wrestling?
Punk, I'm as a performer or promoter, I'm most excited about is to say that absence makes the heart grow fonder is pretty much goes for everyone. But man, in this type of scenario, it's been a minute since he's stepped into the world of professional wrestling and people, the UFC and that, but him re-entering the industry, and yes, he did some Fox stuff, but I mean, like what you're tabling here, it's going to be a special moment because not many times do you see a guy that rose to his heights that dipped out and is now returning.
Yeah.
The curiosity factor alone is through the roof. And then it is, how's it going to be done? The timing's going to be done. Who's going to be that first opponent? How's the crowd going to accept him or his opponent or the story? Just all those kind of things. And then, when I put on my executive producer cap, you start thinking it's one of those things. And I went into this a couple of weeks ago on the podcast, like our industry is so cool. And I think it's one of the biggest things that attracts me. 52 weeks a year. And look, yes, and I saw somebody said people need time off. I agree, but the content being produced 52 weeks a year is fantastic. And there's always next week. So what's happening next week is Punk coming next week or the following week or the following week. And then no matter what happens, we're all going to sit back and either praise it or whatever it may be. But then there's going to be the next week and then the next week. And that's kind of really cool. But I'm excited. I like I said just a second ago, the business in so many ways is super red hot. And I couldn't be more excited.
Well, and as you said, Jeff, we could probably have that conversation for 2, 3, 4 hours. So maybe we'll have it the next time you're here. The coffee's on me the next time you're in Alberta, my friend, but that will have to be until next time. I can't thank you enough for the time because that'd probably take another hour on top of the 3, 4 hours. So if people want to keep up to date with the latest and greatest from Double J, how can they do so? How can they tune into my world?
I make it so simple. My website is realjeffjarrett.com and it will let you know how to download the podcast, the merch, and then all my social media handles, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram is at Real Jeff Jarrett.
Awesome. I would highly suggest it, friends. You can find all of those links below. Jeff, I have answered for years when you've said, ain't I great? I have always said, yes, you are. And it is very, very cool to have the opportunity to have said that face-to-face and get the face-to-face experience with you. Can't thank you enough, friend. Thanks for the time.
Appreciate it. Talk soon.
Anytime at all. Thank you, friends, for tuning into Love Wrestling. Follow us wherever videos are viewed or audio is listened to at Love Wrestling CA. Put a dot in it for the website if you want to get everything in one fell swoop and continue to stay up to date with the latest and greatest from pro wrestling with me, Spencer Love.